We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death there could not be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
I love the three underlying evocative questions of spiritual direction as I would identify them, which are, who am I now? What have I come to believe? And what is mine to do?
Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother, Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
We really enjoy all of our excellent and insightful guests. They generously tell their stories with compassion and wisdom. We also want to thank Wakil and Wendy's children and partners for that wonderful introductory song. Okay, let's get started.
Greetings, friends. On today's episode, we will be talking to Tim Arsenault. Tim retired from hospice of the Florida Sun Coast, now Empath Health, in 2014, where he served for 19 years as a regional program director and the director of spiritual care. Throughout his professional life as an educator, pastor, retreat center administrator, and hospice leader, Tim both sought out and provided spiritual direction.
Thank you, Tim, for being here. Tim, in 1987, worked with colleagues in a Florida retreat center and co-founded Audire, which is Latin for to listen, a program dedicated to the formation of spiritual directors. Audire is an inclusive training program rooted in the Christian religion, offering education and internship in the contemplative, evocative method of spiritual direction. Audire welcomes clergy and laity, along with those who may not be religiously affiliated, and all who wish to support the spiritual journeys of other seekers. Audire continues to this day, offering a hybrid model in person and online of training and supervision in the ancient yet contemporary art and skill of spiritual direction. That's actually where Ana Luisa and I met, was in seminary,
Yes.
learning about spiritual direction,
That's
becoming
exact-
spiritual directors.
That's right.
So I think that's partially why we were enthused to talk to you.
Yes. And welcome, Tim.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate that we have common roots.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we like to begin by asking when you first became aware of death, just to get a little more background on you.
Death really cast a shadow on my early growing up years. When I was 13, I lost an uncle unexpectedly. And then 2 years later, two grandparents. And then when I was in my early 20s, my parents died within 9 months of each other. And my way of coping, because I grew up Catholic, 2 blocks from the church and school and 12 years of Catholic education, I tended to spiritualize things, and not so much in a good way. It was much more spiritual bypassing, I would call it.
Yeah.
And because my family knew that I had a rich Catholic education, when crises related to death came along, they would look to me for support. And oftentimes I would provide the easy answers and the traditional answers. And that led me to actually seek out a vocation as Catholic clergy, which I did for 20 years. Kubler-Ross wasn't part of my upbringing. I didn't know about stages of grief and all of that. And so all that information that came later really was so helpful in integrating the impact of death on my early life. Did that answer your question? I could go on, but
Yeah, no, that's
You
great.
did. Yeah. And also you use a word that I would love for you to just take a few sentences and explain to our listeners, because we understand, Wakil and I will understand what spiritual bypassing means, but not everybody will. So just in a few words, spiritual bypassing.
Spiritual bypassing for me would be going toward the easy answers and answers that would really be intended to comfort the pain of another or comfort your own pain. Examples would be, he or she is in a better place. Well, they're with God now. And it doesn't really witness to the depth of hurt and suffering. And really the only way you can journey through grief is to be present to it at whatever stage it is.
Right.
And so spiritual bypassing can really shortstop some of that processing.
Perfectly.
That is so wonderful to hear it stated that way. So thank you.
Exactly.
Well, I know it well because I did it.
Yeah. And we all do it. It's not something that some people are better at avoiding than others. I think that we are taught from an early age to try to close our eyes and squeeze in our hands and go through something really difficult as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And so that spiritual bypassing is very cotidiano. It's daily. Everybody, we're doing it, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to diminish in any sense the spiritual comfort that deep faith brings. However, deep faith, I believe, is born of experience and born of growing into a deep faith and sometimes wandering through a desert for a while.
Yeah.
Right.
So I really appreciate that. And it sounds like this formation of experiences with death casts a different light into your entire life. So could you talk about how death has impacted your life story?
Oh, thank you. Certainly losing my parents as I did early on. And I joined a Franciscan community when I was 17. And they were, for me, found family and provided me with an education, provided me with a supportive environment, and supported the early days of grief, losing my parents. My dad was an alcoholic, and I think, I find that if you scratch beneath the surface of many people in helping professions, there is some kind of alcoholism or addiction that was present in the family. There's a wonderful song, Drew Halcomb and the Neighbors. I don't know if you're familiar with that group, but the name of the song is You Got to Find Your People. And so along the way, I've been blessed to find my people. When I was 42 and director of a retreat center, a very busy retreat center, double pneumonia came out of the blue right before the Christmas season.
Oh,
One of the busiest times at the retreat center. And I was forced to put down my calendar, spent 10 days in the hospital, and it was the best retreat I ever made. And it was truly a life-threatening situation. Sister Death was kind of hovering outside the door. And so that led to my whole sort of midlife rearranging my life. So I appreciate the writings of Richard Rohr. And he points out that great love and great suffering are two portals to deeper meaning.
Yeah.
And so I had the opportunity to rearrange my life, left the friars amicably, and was offered a position in hospice care, which was really a continuation of ministry in many ways.
Yeah.
And had the privilege of leading and supervising care teams who would go out into homes and nursing homes to care for people who were dying. So the death thread, if there is such a thing,
Yeah.
it weaves its way through my story.
Yeah, I appreciate the Franciscan connection to Richard Rohr is a favorite of mine, as far as the people I look to for inspiration every day. And just finishing his book, in fact, which is a really great book, the newest one, The Tears of Things, which has really been striking a chord in this current environment. A lot of tears, and tears are necessary and useful. And as you said, these are these doorways that he talks about into either suffering or joy. And, I was also struck by the fact that this is something that had happened to me and seen happen over and over again. The body will take you down if you don't pay attention, right?
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks
Yeah.
for
The
that
body
story.
knows the score. Isn't that the title of a book?
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It does. Well, and it's all, working in concert with our minds, our hearts, and the physical incarnation of our souls, right? So we have to get put down when it's like, it's not working anymore.
Take a break. Well, can you tell us a little bit more about your current work with Audire or whatever you're working on now? If there's other things, we'd love to hear about that as well. But tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days and what's inspiring you.
Well, I retired from hospice in 2014, but I always maintained spiritual direction practice. And upon retirement, I was able to expand that practice a bit and also continue teaching in the Audire program. I've recently retired from teaching to again further concentrate on my practice. And the last 3 years, I had extraordinary experiences losing 3 of the directees I was working with. One was expected. I journeyed with this wonderful woman through her passages with breast cancer. But the other 2 were completely sudden and unexpected. One was a woman in her early 60s who was a college administrator, and after she retired, pursued ordination in the Anglican tradition as a deacon. Just a wonderful, articulate, bright woman who sought out spiritual direction to really integrate all the theology that she was studying and asking herself, well, how do I bring this home to my life? But she died unexpectedly of an aneurysm right during a bishop's council meeting, which was just extraordinary and dramatic. But it was just that quick. And then I had been working with a young man in his mid-30s. I had met him when he was 24, and he came pursuing spiritual direction. Who at 24 pursues spiritual direction? My goodness, he just this extraordinary, bright, articulate young man who was wrestling with should he pursue a career in ministry or pursue a career in professional finance. And as things evolved, actually, he determined that he was called to a bivocational ministry, that he would have a professional job and also pursue ministry, kind of like Paul the tent maker, but in a much more modern way.
Yeah.
Anyway, this goes back 8 months now. I got an unexpected call from his mother, who knew me, to say that he was gone. What do you mean gone? He died unexpectedly in a crazy pool accident. And this young man was as close to a son that I would ever experience. And in fact, we decided not to continue our spiritual direction relationship, to put that aside and just pursue the fact that we were deeply connected to each other.
Wow.
And he left a wonderful wife and 2 beautiful children. So I'd have to say that experience, those 3 experiences brought me to my knees as well, realizing that I needed spiritual direction myself, which I've always been faithful to, but really needed to process the meaning of those losses. And how do I, even though I worked for hospice, I knew the stages of grief and all of that, was very familiar with those passages. But when it comes to your own door, you need help. And
yeah, absolutely.
Through spiritual direction and finding my people, I've been able to continue to integrate this. That was really the subject of the article for Presence that I wrote that led to our connection.
Yeah.
That spiritual directors grieve as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I wonder, along the line of current working stuff, could you tell us a little bit more about it, Audire, the program Audire, and then we can move on to the next thing?
So when I was working in the retreat center in Orlando, that Catholic diocese was growing by leaps and bounds. People were moving in due to Disney and a lot of the tech companies and all of that. And Catholic churches were focused on brick and mortar primarily. And, clergy had no extra time to sit one-on-one with folks. And I had been trained in the Shalem model of spiritual direction in Washington, D.C. And so some of us were sitting around considering programming at the center. Well, why couldn't we bring some of that training to Orlando and Central Florida and help to ease the burden of pastors and help to train people to be professional listeners and not therapists, but really help folks to focus on their relationship with their God as they understand God. So we developed the program taking the wisdom of Shalem and bringing it to our area, using some of that curriculum, adding our own, and began the training program. Initially, it was 2 years. We realized that there was a need for an introduction to supervision, which was really to bring your work to peers so that the peers can help you understand your own movement of the spirit as you work with another person and how not to get in your own way. So with a variety of ups and downs, the program still exists today. And we are training spiritual directors in what is called the contemplative evocative method of spiritual direction, which is simply to be present to the other person, which is not easy, putting aside all your stuff and parking it for a while, to truly be present. And through the method of respectful, evocative questions to help the directee move more deeply into their own experience. I love the 3 underlying evocative questions of spiritual direction as I would identify them, which are, who am I now? What have I come to believe? And what is mine to do?
Good questions for all of us at any moment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And we'll put some links to that school and maybe to Shalem, he's called it, Shalem, so people can learn more about that if they're interested as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I really love this foundation that you have for spiritual directors. What I hear is that you use this as well when you're, well, let me just ask you this point of clarification. Do you still work with hospice?
No.
No. Okay.
I retired.
You retired.
From hospice, yeah.
Okay. But still, it is interesting to use these deep listening skills to sit with folks who are possibly at the late stages of being mortal, right? Like to learn to listen deeply, park yourself to the side, witness and support. So do you find that that's actually helpful?
Well, it's interesting. The current directees that I work with range in age now from mid-30s to 92.
Wow.
And the people in their mid-30s who are parenting and are oftentimes part of that sandwich generation, taking care of little ones and then taking care of elders and facing the decline and death of those elders.
Sure.
And then at the other end of the spectrum, wonderful people in their 80s and early 90s who are processing the meaning of their lived lives and the catalog of their losses. And so I'm not so much sitting at the bedside of a dying person. However, I'm sitting with and listening to a dying person because we all are.
We all are. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And I think Aunt Louisa and I would agree that those skills of listening and caring and companioning people come in handy all day, every day, right? Those
Exactly.
they're just to make a better sense of being with people, which is so important and needed right now.
And it's so countercultural,
Yeah.
with all the avenues of social media. It's really all about talking,
Yeah.
all about
Exactly.
talking and putting out in the universe, wondering if somebody's listening, or measuring your value by the amount of likes you get,
Right. Yeah.
which
Exactly.
is, we can go off on that tangent, but
Yeah, that's become a big issue for many people, especially our young people, but I think everybody these days. But okay,
does.
let's see. Okay, challenges.
Well, I kind of restructured that last question because the challenges was akin to like working with folks who are passing or in their, but what are your challenges in working with spiritual directees?
challenges. Sorry for pausing. I don't
No.
want to give the first answer off the top of my head.
As a spiritual director should do. Not once, not twice, not three times, but
So challenges, first of all, for me to be able to carve out space before a session and after a session. I can be tempted to fill up my day and then breeze into a session, and it's not fair to the directee. I need to give myself some space prior to either jumping on a Zoom call or welcoming them at my front door. Secondly, to really make sure my schedule is open enough where I have time after the session to really ask myself evocative questions. What about the quality of my own attention? What hooked me? What was the golden thread in this session? Did I bypass or somehow offer advice when really I should be listening even before I make a suggestion? Challenge would be the avalanche of books and resources that are out there, and really sorting through what is good and useful as opposed to what is more entertainment. Another challenge would be developing evocative questions that are not judgmental,
Right.
that offer an avenue to deeper reflection, and making sure I'm asking questions that are truly open-ended and not with an answer implied.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A challenge would be when someone is stuck and stuck either in pain or fear or worry. And I am not a therapist, but I'm a companion. And so to sit with them in that dark place and not rush them out of that room.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I love this. This is kind of spiritual direction 101 for anybody who's interested in getting started in this. Beautifully put and really
it
beautifully,
really is. Yeah.
beautifully
Articulated.
beautiful examples. Yeah. And really articulated. Thank you. Is there anything that frightened you about the end of life, having been in this world for as long as you have?
Yeah. I love the writing of Brian McLaren, and he raises the question, what is the opposite of faith? And for him, the answer is not doubt, but the opposite of faith is certitude.
Right.
Certitude?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as I move on in aging, I'm becoming much more comfortable with uncertainty.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah.
My Christian heritage certainly offers a vision of hope for a next life. And yet, I'm not going to try and live my life in a way that I spend energy trying to earn that next life. I am trying to live a life of appreciating the here and now. And is there a next life? I'm not sure. I don't know. I hope there is. I hope there is a reunion.
Yes.
And there's so much mystery and mysticism around end of life and what's next. And there's a lot that we know, but boy, there is an awful lot that we don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And so you asked the question, what frightens me? I once said to a person, I don't mind going, but I don't want to go messy.
Yeah.
And given medicine these days and medical interventions and surgeries and all, the journey to death is not a straight line down. It is very much days of wellness, days of decline, days of recovery, this intervention, another recovery. And so what frightens me, I think, is pain. And working for hospice, I have a lot of hope that pain, all kinds of pain, would be managed well.
Yeah. Yes.
Secondly, that if I should die messy, that there are good and wonderful home health aides who know what to do and treat me with dignity. I would have to say, we cared for my husband's father and mother in our home. And there were wonderful home health aides came and honestly did some very messy things. And yet did that work with love and affirmation and no sense of diminishment at all. I don't know if that answered your question.
What a
Joaquin.
gift.
That was a very good question.
That was a very good answer, really.
It
really
was.
was.
It
And I
is.
loved the way you said they deal with all kinds of pain. So, not just the physical pain, but the anguish and the sadness and the loss and grief that people go through. It's true. My work in hospice, I found that as well, that's part of the work. And the chaplains and the social workers and the nurses, everybody really is there because they care, because they want to make that transition as beautiful and comfortable as it can be. And sometimes it's messy. There's no way around it.
Right. Yeah. And dignified, right? Like it brings dignity to the process.
And you also made the point of agency about hoping they'll do the things you've asked them to do, or that they know what you want them to have happen. And we talk a lot about making sure you've written that down, making sure people know. So that's great. Thank you so much. That was a great answer. Yes, very good.
So in all this beautiful work that you are doing, accompanying folks, how do you keep yourself resourced so that you are ready and available to do this sacred work?
I take great strength from having found my people. There is a network of like-minded folks in my community here physically and also in the wider world. I spend time in the morning in quiet. Also, I try to keep my ear to the ground, picking up on books and resources. Richard Rohr, Brian McLaren, Thomas Merton. There are so many others, and my mind is swirling at the moment. But certainly keeping my nose to the grindstone in terms of picking up resources like that.
Yeah. Continuing education, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. Carrie Newcomer. Do you know her music?
Yeah. Beautiful.
You can do this hard thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, she's developed a partnership now with Parker Palmer, Let Your Life Speak. And it was a tremendous resource in terms of my own midlife transitioning and also learning to know about me and my preferences. When I learned of the Myers-Briggs, it was like, oh my goodness, you can put into words exactly who I am. And so learning more deeply who I am and of course the Enneagram has been helpful as well. So all those resources kind of help me to keep my tools sharp.
Yeah, perfect.
Keep it good.
Well put. Yeah. I think, I'll just say that going back through all of our podcasts, there's so many resources that we've listed. We probably want to make we have a resource document that we send to people when they subscribe, but that, there's so many, like you said, there's so many good resources out there, and it's just, we've been so blessed, and we're being blessed again right now.
We are.
Is there anything you wish we had asked you that we didn't get to?
I am a gay man in a long-term relationship, and part of the process of coming out to myself and to my family and then living into my identity has edges of grief to it.
Sure.
Certainly.
Yeah.
It is disturbing that the issue of sexual identity and gender have become so divisive in religious circles.
Yes.
You know, the Methodist tradition has just gone through a period of disaffiliations.
Mhm.
And so I know you didn't ask me about that, but that's certainly an issue that is sort of underneath the surface of who I am.
Yeah.
More than it's not under the surface, it's right there. You know, I don't live a hidden life in that regard.
Yeah,
And there are places in this country that are hostile to
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
my chosen lifestyle. And, you know, we're together for 30, going on 31 years,
Wow. Beautiful.
which is miraculous.
It is.
You
Yes,
know,
it is.
for straight marriages. And
Exactly.
the odds were against us. There's 18 years difference between us.
Mm.
He comes from a Baptist background. I come from a Catholic background. And we somehow have managed to forge a life together in spite of the odds. So these dating apps and all of that imply that you could find the perfect one. Well, sorry to say, imperfection is a part of the whole
That's
picture.
right. So well put. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, the reason we asked that question is because of this kind of a treasures and jewels that we get to hear about. So I really appreciate you sharing
Yes.
that, and so important. And I think we could do a whole nother podcast simply just about what is, what life is like as a different identity than the accepted ones, because
Yeah.
right now, so many of those folks are friends and siblings, and those groups are under threat more than they've ever been. And it's very painful to watch. It's another grief level, another grief area of grief for many of us, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate that you have lived into your identity and found joy and beauty in a relationship.
Yeah.
And to me, it just speaks to when we are authentic in showing up how we are, who we are, blessings come our way. And just the same way, like, I say this quite a few times, I show up to dinner parties talking about death and dying and don't get asked back. And so, like,
You're
I'm
the turd in the punch bowl.
yeah, that's essentially what it is. But, I'm still hoping that, with more people open to being death positive and having hard conversations about who we are, how we're living, how we're dying, more of us can come together and just be chosen community for each other.
Thank you for your good work. Everything in this world has an expiration date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're helping your listeners savor the right now.
Well said. Perfectly said. Well, let's go ahead and end with the
Poem.
wonderful poem you gave us by Jan Richardson. Do you want to read it yourself, or would you like us to do so?
I can read it.
Okay, great.
I don't know if you know Jan. She is a wonderful writer and retreat leader. She lost her husband, and it deeply impacted certainly her life. And she would be an amazing guest, by the way.
All right. Yeah. If you know her personally, please introduce us.
Yeah. So this is called Blessing for the Brokenhearted. Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that it is better to have this pain without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound, when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating as if it were made for precisely this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts that its own persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
the heart soul remedy for breaking is to love still.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful poem. Thank you.
I know.
Yeah, I do hope
can I
we
cry?
can. Yes, absolutely. The tears are things, right?
Ah,
Yeah, I've been experiencing and talking and realizing a lot about the sacredness of crying and tears, and somebody called it the baptism
Yeah.
that we can experience. So yeah, definitely tears are important. Thank you. We always thank anybody who cries on our podcast. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling that too.
yeah.
So thank you again, Tim. It's really been an amazing and excellent conversation. And thank you for your work and for your continued presence and for being there and being who you are. We really just appreciate you.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much.
Well, it was an honor to really be interviewed, and all that anxiety evaporated with your gentleness and respectfulness. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. We encourage you to subscribe to have access to premium episodes and extra resources. Links to our guests and their recommendations and a transcript of this episode will be in the podcast notes.
Yes, thank you so much. And please tell all your friends. Follow us on social media, and again, consider subscribing for some excellent premium content. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand. We also want to acknowledge that we live on unceded lands that have been cared for thousands of years by Indigenous peoples who are still here.